Once a month or so, we rescue travel writer, photographer Randall Shirley from one of his world adventures. Not long ago, he spent some time exploring northern Italy and all of its pasta and wine, I think. It is my pleasure to welcome Randall Shirley back to Studio 4 to tell us more. You see, I know you're a hedonist like I am, and I know you go to no country without exploring the food and the wine.
Well, kind of, but you've forgotten that I gave up booze a couple of years ago.
Oh. Darn.
Yeah, well...
I have forgotten that.
Yeah, and you know, it's really been interesting.
But good for you.
Well, you know, it was a choice that needed to be made in my life, and it's been interesting, especially as a travel writer, because wine and alcohol is so often a really crucial element of, or perceived to be a crucial... Sure, part of the joie de vivre and
the dolce vita.
Yeah, and you can learn to do it without it.
I'm so happy to know that. I don't want to try it, but I'm happy to know that. Does your partner drink?
He doesn't drink
sample?
Either. No,
the two of you.
We're both dry.
In Italy, dry.
But it's
Life
really,
is not about booze, I know.
No, and Italy actually isn't nearly as much about alcohol or about wine as we perceive that it is. A large reason that we took this trip was to visit his family who live in northern Italy. His extended family is all there. And we found that the Italians, real day-to-day Italians, hardly ever drink. And or what they have is a glass of wine they start with one glass of wine at the beginning of the meal. 3 hours later, they're still on the same glass of wine.
No, I understand. And they don't have like 2-hour cocktail hours and come to the table sloshed.
And they kept saying to us, well, you don't drink, but just have a glass of wine.
Right, because you have a glass of wine when you're 12. Don't you know that?
Right.
Of course you do, and you made it. And it's just in the house.
That's right, and because of that, I don't know how many of them become alcoholic, but
I don't either. But we should study up on that.
All right, for a future episode.
Why not? So, northern Italy. Why northern Italy specifically? Well, because you have a partner there who has a family there, or a partner here who has a family there. But Tuscany and Roma and Florence and all of that we've done.
Well, my partner, I have not done Tuscany and Rome. I've never been to Rome.
I have.
We did Tuscany on this trip. We did some southern Italy. We'll come back to that in the future. But we specifically did northern Italy, where his family is. My partner grew up mostly in British Columbia, but spent many of his childhood and youth summers in Italy.
Okay.
And so he wanted to take me and show me this place of his youth and introduce me to all of his family. And we're getting married this summer, so he wanted to.
Oh, great! So you have a ready-made tour guide.
Yeah.
Why not? So where did he take you?
So his home region is near the town of Oslo, which is just magic. And the places that I'm hoping that we inspire people to visit in northern Italy are small places. I mean, there's the big town, of course, is Venice.
Right.
And on the other side, the big town is Milan.
You're right. So Milano and Venice.
In between, and especially in the Veneto region, the foothills of the Dolomite Mountains, are these towns that are just magic. And they're Italy without tourists. I mean, Oslo has some tourists. Robert Browning, and he used to practically live there. And a street in Oslo is named after Robert Browning, just a little British poet, I think.
Small British poet.
Not so successful, but somehow he's been remembered.
Somehow.
Anyway.
In Italy.
Yeah, in Italy of all places. Anyway, so Oslo is this mountaintop castle, and you can see it from the flat valley floor forever. You can see this castle on top of the hill, and around it are many smaller towns, and some of them, you know, are not so interesting, but others. And I found pretty much every town has something interesting. It has an interesting bakery. It has an interesting pizza joint. It has an interesting something. Oslo itself, you wind up the mountain road to the top of the hill, and you're just in this village that's almost stuck in a time warp. Yet it's also modern and interesting.
So you can buy Max Mara.
Well, I wasn't searching for Max Mara.
Okay, well I would have been, and I'm sure
you would have been.
I'm sure you can find it. The City of 100 Horizons.
That's what they call it.
It's being called, or the Pearl of the Province of Treviso.
The Pearl of the Province. Yeah, and it's well known and well loved. Now the locals, my relatives there, will tell you that it's entirely unaffordable, owned because it's a lot of it is owned by outsiders who've come in and bought up the historic buildings and turned them into
When you say outsiders, Italians moving there, or is it multi-ethnic now?
Well,
more immigrants?
I wouldn't say it's so much multi-ethnic. I think there's a lot of other Europeans who have bought up and opened, and maybe even some North Americans. I don't know. I didn't meet enough of them to actually find out. but people who have opened hotels or B&Bs or converted things or have a second home there.
Okay.
But down the hill are all these other towns. And just a few miles away is Castelfranco.
Oh.
Which, to me, this was the magic place of our trip to this region. It's like, it sort of reminded me...
In Treviso province? Is that right?
Not going to promise you that it's in Treviso, but it's nearby.
Okay. It's inland from Venice.
Yes, it's inland from Venice. And I got confused in crossing over province boundaries and region boundaries. You'd go under a sign on the road that would say, you know, welcome to Treviso, and then a little ways later you'd be welcome to somewhere else. I'm like, okay, well, that's still Italy and it's all great.
Exactly.
But Castelfranco was, I found it to be this real Italian city with a 900-year-old castle in the middle of it. And it was sort of like, I'd compare it to Lethbridge, Alberta, actually.
Really? A city or a town?
It's a town, I would think it's about that size. I don't know my populations. But it's a town at the foothills of the Dolomites. It's the service center of the farming community. So you're driving into town and there's the tractor dealership and the car dealerships.
Right.
The regional medical center, all very modern, all very today. And then all of a sudden you're in the historic town center.
An old town.
Crossing the castle moat to go and sit down and have your al fresco lunch next to the bajillion-year-old cathedral.
Wow, with your espresso, of course.
With your espresso.
And you went to the grappa land, but I know you didn't have a grappa.
Yeah, that was a really interesting stop. There's another town nearby, and these are all quite close to each other. Bassano del Grappa is a riverside town with these lovely painted pink pastel or colored pastel buildings along the river.
At those now.
Magnificent covered bridge there called the Ponte Vecchio, or the Old Bridge. It's a predominantly footbridge for pedestrians. And it's the birthplace of grappa. And right at the end of the bridge that we just saw in that photo is the original distillery, and it's, you know, they have a little bar and you can go in and sample the grappa there.
Sure. And you may not know this, but there's good grappa and there's not so good grappa.
Well, I'm going to bet that the grappa there was the good stuff.
The good stuff, not just the dregs. Well, I'm thinking, and some of the beautiful bottles, the Venetian bottles, all the bottles that you bring home in your little suitcase.
Right, in your checked suitcase
in
these
your
days,
checked suitcase these days, that's the thing. And then your grappa's broken all over your underwear. What do you do?
Well, we're not even going to go there. You have to wring it out.
We can't go there. So Asiago is a cheese, but it's also a town.
That's right. So there's another surprise town. Asiago is, we all know it as a cheese, right? We've shredded it on our pasta.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing signposts for Asiago, and my partner can't drive a stick shift. He's going to hate me for saying that publicly on the air. So I had to do
can you teach him?
Yeah, can you teach your partner, your spouse, anything?
No, not to. He can't drive a stick shift. He must be young.
Not really, but he's younger than me. Let's just say that. Anyway, so I had to do all the driving because, of course, in Europe, your rental cars tend to be standards, and so you know, we had our little Fiat car, and we also had a little another Italian brand that slips my mind at the moment. But anyway, I kept seeing signs for Asiago, and I thought, by darn, I'm going to this place of the cheese. Skip some of the other places. So one day we were driving along the highway, and off we went, and up this winding mountain road, classic sort of Italian thing that you'd only see James Bond driving in a movie, and we're in our little Fiat, and almost ran out of gas getting to Asiago. It just kept being a little further and no gas stations, and we were getting a little nervous, but suddenly we were in Alpine Italy, and very high mountain scenery and cows with cowbells, and well, what do you do with cows with cowbells? You milk them and you make cheese.
Of course you do.
And this beautiful, lush valley, and in the middle of it all, this Italian version of an alpine town, and there apparently are ski resorts nearby. And it's touristy for Italians, but it's not so easy to get to. And most of these places are not so easy to get to.
Okay, but it makes sense to go in any country where the natives go.
Well, yeah.
It just does, and rather than where all the tourists are.
You know, and when you open your guidebook to Italy, and you see, you know, Rick Steves' top 10 places to go, maybe go to some other places, because everybody else is going to those places. It doesn't mean they're not fabulous places.
Of course not,
But you know, on everyone's top 10 list, or many people's top 10 list for Italy, is a visit to Siena in the center of Tuscany.
Of course.
Well, we didn't actually like it. We went for a couple of nights. There were so many tourists, and this was in October.
It's like Amalfi Coast. You go down the Amalfi Coast, and it's full of like buses and,
Yeah.
you know, where's Sophia Loren, you ask?
Yeah.
In Positano
Yeah.
somewhere, but
She's
it's not the same. She's
And
somewhere.
Same thing with Venice. I mean, in Venice, I mean, everybody needs to see Venice once in their life.
Right.
You need to brave the crowds, and there are crowds from everywhere on earth. And I mean, literally, the moment you've been, yeah?
Sure.
You step into St. Mark's Square.
I know.
And
When I go to Italy, I want to live there, and then people say you don't want to live here. You just want to visit here because when you live here, other things happen.
yeah, well, and you know, talking
But buy a
with-
Vespa and have some fun. Bologna? Did you get to Bologna?
Yeah, magic place. Another place that's off the tourist map. It's a major city, but for whatever reason, tourists haven't found it.
So it's the Po River. What is it? The Po River? It is the Po
I
River.
believe it
Bologna.
is, yeah.
Yes. Oh, so
The
beautiful.
oldest university in Europe is in Bologna.
Cosmopolitan Italian
very.
colleges. One big college there, right? Bologna.
I don't know how many universities
Yeah,
are
but
there.
history, art, music.
It's just dripping with it. And you go there, and the vibrancy of the youth that are still coming from, literally from all over Europe to study at that university, paired alongside the ancient feeling of these buildings and the history of the place, there's sort of this balance of vigor and future married to history and past. We were just awestruck by
How great. Well, it doesn't get better than that.
We're out of time already? How did that happen?
Because we were chatting.
Oh, dear.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Randall Shirley, travel writer and great photographer. And before we tell you about tomorrow, we say adios to my first floor director, the sensational Chilean one Sergio Contreras, who is escaping through a crack in the Shaw family wall, along with his longtime workplace mate, the multi-talented Marlene Gurvich from Urban Rush. They are not eloping. They are retiring. After today, they will probably be sipping some fine red in sunnier climes. So adios, amigo, amiga, and as Mr. Bob Hope always said in closing, thanks for the memories. Remember, you can catch all of our conversations on YouTube or follow us on Twitter at Fanny Studio 4.